Power Query Editor, the battlefield of Power BI. Welcome data folks in the series of Power BI. If you have been following this playlist of Power BI, you must have watched that session where I have given an interface tool of Power BI desktop. I told you about how to load the data and all the components that our Power BI desktop has. But in this session, we are going to understand that cockpit of Power BI which is called Power Query Editor. Now that section is very important when it comes to cleaning the data, reshaping the data, transforming the data, because I think 70 to 60% of our time we are going to spend there. So it's very important to know that interface and to understand that interface. Once you understand that interface, that entire workflow becomes very intuitive for you. So let's take the tour of Power Query Editor, shall we? So currently you see a blank report open in front of us. And in my previous session where I gave you the interface of Power BI desktop, I already told you what are the ways to launch Power Query Editor. But let's see that again. Under ribbon component, we have an option called transform data. And if we click here, and if we click on this transform data option, this is going to launch a separate navigator, a separate tab where we can transform the data. So this is one way of opening that Power Query Editor, okay? But right now I want to load the data, that's why we will not launch Power Query Editor from here. We'll go through this way. So first we are going to load the data and then we'll see how Power Query Editor looks like. So first I clicked on Get Data, then Excel Workbook because my source of data is Excel Workbook, and then I'll scroll down, I'll choose the file which I want to upload, and this will take a bunch of seconds to load. This opens this separate navigator. You see the data is getting loaded and you can already see that my sheet has been loaded. My sheet has two tabs, data 1 and data 2. As I click on these tabs, then you can see the preview is getting loaded. I clicked on data 1, so preview of data 1 has been loaded. If I click on data 2, similarly, you can see the preview of data 2. You can just switch between them as you wanted to see the preview of respective data set. Our data is getting previewed here. Now we have three options. One is load data, transform data, and cancel. We want to go to Power Query Editor in order to transform data. So before loading it to the Power BI model, we are going to reshape our data. That's why we'll click on transform data. Again, this will also take a few seconds before it opens the Power Query Editor. And yes, the Power Query Editor has opened. This is how Power Query Editor looks like. First, let's break it down into the 5 important components that we have under Power Query Editor. First things first, this is the first component and very important component. 80% of your cleaning will, not 80%, all of your cleaning and transformation will take place here in the ribbon component, okay? The second component is this left side pane, which is headed as queries. This is your second component. The third component is nothing but the central area where you can see your data in a tabular format. You can see the columns, you can see the rows, you can preview the data. If you are making any changes, that changes will be available for you to visualize here as well. Then the fourth component would be this query setting component, which is at the right hand side of the Power Query Editor, where you have the properties of the data that you have loaded. Beneath these properties, you have an amazing thing which is applied steps. I will talk about it in detail in a while. This was the fourth component. And the fifth component that we have is this line status bar that you see beneath all that central area, the queries, the query settings pane. You see one line, this is called status bar. This tells you about what's going on behind the scenes when we make any kind of changes. So this was an overview about the components that Power Query Editor has. But let's understand these components in a little better way, okay? So we'll start with the first component, a very important component, which is ribbon. This ribbon is the central command of the Power Query Editor. As I told already, all of the transformation and reshaping of the data takes place with the help of your ribbon component. This is the place where all of your transformation tools live. Okay, now in general, if you see under this ribbon component, we have 5 tabs: Home, Transform, Add Column, View, Tools, and Help. But in order to transform the data, we are going to use 3 tabs quite frequently, and those 3 tabs will be Home. When you open transform data, by default it lands you on the Home tab. So we are currently on the Home tab, and you can, whatever options you see here is under Home tab. Then the second tab, which we are going to use quite often, will be the Transform tab. If you just click here, you can see all the options under Transform tab. And then you have third tab, which is Add Column tab. As I click there, you can see all the options under Add Column will appear. So let's talk about Home tab. Right from giving you an option to load the data, it has all the required options that you need. So this new source that you see, it's nothing but it's giving you an option to load the data into Power Query Editor directly. Then you have recent sources. It shows what are the sources that you have just uploaded your data from. Then you have enter data. I have already discussed about it. You can just click on here and you copy paste your data from anywhere. After that, you have multiple options like remove columns, choose columns, remove rows, split columns. So suppose if you have a data set where you have blank rows or blank columns and that's going to be redundant in long term and you want to remove it. So all you have to do is just select the column and click on remove column. Or maybe you want to remove the row, just select the row and remove the row. You'll get multiple options and you can remove the row as per your requirement. This is pretty much about the Home tab. Now let's go to the Transform tab, which is the second most used Transform tab. So in this tab, of course, you have multiple options. Just for example, if you have a date column in your data set and that is not in the date format, then what you're supposed to do? Go to Transform tab, select that date column and just go here, data type. You see, this will give you a bunch of options to change the data type. So these kinds of transformation takes place in here. Now comes the third tab, which is Add Column. Suppose you have in your data set, you have a column called revenue and then you have a column called cost and you want to calculate the profit. I'm just giving you a simple example and you want to add a column where you can calculate this profit, which will go revenue minus cost. Then what are you supposed to do? You just need to come here, add the column and perform that calculation. These were few examples that I gave. You can use these tabs for, but we are going to use these tabs quite frequently and we are going to understand all the options that's available here when we'll transform the data. This was pretty much about this component 1, which was ribbon. Now let's move towards the second component, which was query 2. This pane is nothing but it stores all the tables that you have loaded in Power Query Editor. So currently I have loaded this Excel workbook, which has 2 tabs, data 1 and data 2. So you can see the list already available. If you have loaded multiple tables, then you can see all the list right here in the Queries pane. And you can just switch around if you want to see the data 2, if you want to see the data 1. If you right click on data 1, you can see a bunch of options like delete, rename, duplicate. Suppose I'll just show you an example. I'll just click on duplicate. What happens? Data 1 gets duplicated. If I do not want this duplication to happen, I just right click and delete. It'll ask, are you sure to delete? Yes, I'm sure to delete. And that's it. And then again, we can preview the data. Then the third comes the central part of the Power Query Editor. A part where you are actually visualizing your data in tabular format. You are seeing what changes are you making. That is the third component. Okay, you can just scroll to the right to see whatever columns you want. This is nothing but a place where you can preview your data. And then comes the fourth component, Query Settings Pane. Okay, so the first thing that you see in this Query Settings Pane is properties. This is nothing but it shows the sheet that you have uploaded here. So currently the name of that sheet is data 2. Suppose if I just want to change it to customer data. That's it. The name is changed, right? Similarly, if I also want to change the data, the name of the data 1, then I can just change it to maybe sales data. That's it. It's done. This gives you the flexibility to change the name of the sheet. Beneath this properties, you can see applied steps. This is my favorite part of the Power Query Editor, and this is very powerful. You need to understand. So whatever transformation you make, whatever cleaning, removing, adding, promoting the rows as headers, whatever changes you make, Power Query Editor stores them as the applied steps right here. Now what happens? Suppose if by mistake you removed a wrong column, right? Human error. All you have to do is just go and click on this cross button and that step will be undone. And that is the power of this applied step. So currently you see it shows change type. Why it's showing? Because I have changed the data type of this column. That's why it's showing the change type. If I just want to go and delete this step, let's do that. Just click on this and that's it. So that step was reversed. And this has other advantages as well. Suppose you come back after a few days and you wanted to see that how did I transform this data? What all steps did I take? You do not have to break your head for that. You can just go in applied steps and you can see what exactly you did, right? So this is amazing. This will be like an action history of whatever steps that you have taken. You can just come here and you can just see what steps did I take, do I need these steps now, or do I need to delete this, and you can just do whatever you want. And you know what, because of this property of Power Query Editor, it becomes the repeatable automation tool. Okay, so that was about the fourth pane. Now let's understand the fifth. It's just a line, but it also plays a very important role when it comes to know about your data preview. So here it shows how many columns are there, how many rows are being shown here. So apart from the rows and columns, it shows you if you are taking any step, then that shows you that what's going on behind the scenes, and it also shows that how long the last step took to evaluate, and these kinds of stuff you can see in the status bar. So this was the interface tool of Power Query Editor. I hope you got an idea of all the components that we have in Power Query Editor. It will be helpful for you when you actually start working on the transformations of the data and the reshaping of the data. You will have an idea of what these components are showing and how can I use these components and what information can I get from which component. So that's why I gave this tour, and from next session we might load the data and we might start transforming. So stay tuned, study hard, and bye bye.